This is our annual budget hearing, and we're certainly, we are open for business to hear from staff, anyone else, and we can continue to have conversations. If Tim has anything to say, Margaret, members of the press community, so we will give it a few minutes. We are here to hear from anyone. There's been multiple meetings over the last few days, whether it was the budget presentation last night plus PTA council this morning. But certainly we have to have a budget hearing by state law, and this is on this date. Well, we picked the date, and this is the date within that window, as far as I know. Dr. Brown, correct?
Yes, and this budget hearing is live on our website right now for anyone who wishes to speak. So the things that we say while waiting for people to show up are being broadcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's a good point.
Privilege reminder to all.
And regarding the budget vote next week, next Tuesday, starting, I guess, noon to 9 at your favorite voting venue. I want to once again thank Danielle for all her work.
I heard very positive things from both. It's amazing.
Danielle's been cranking out the work and getting well versed in the rules and regs of New York State education law, and we appreciate that.
Doesn't matter.
So we'll always take the opportunity to thank those who make things happen, and that's Danielle and everyone else involved in this process and the budget process throughout the year, Dr. Brown, right?
Yes, it's a year-long continuous improvement process.
And Wednesday, May 22nd, we're going to start the process for the next budget. So frankly, it's probably already started, I think. Because we've really came to, we put our budget together and came to a conclusion on where we were on the budget at $111 million and change a while ago. I almost have to remember where we were because we really have moved on to next year. But that doesn't mean we don't want to diminish the opportunity for folks to still have input. So that's why we're here.
Is there any chance that we could use the robocall to get people out to vote?
Yes, we plan on blitzing folks, and the robocall is one option, and we've talked about what that would look like. So a robocall, using social media outlets, Twitter, email communication. So we're planning on doing much over the next week
Okay.
to get the word out, including tonight's board meeting, which will be televised.
Reminding people to vote, not necessarily to vote one way or the other, because that's not what we do.
Vote.
Yes. I could do my secret
We will eventually call the budget hearing to close and then start our regular public meeting. But I do anticipate that we'll probably move in an exec session until our regular 7 o'clock time back here. But we'll give it a...
We should wait a few more minutes.
Oh no, we're going to give it a few minutes. And staff can ask questions too. I mean, it's not just public, and staff can ask about the budget. So if Matt has anything he wants to ask.
The chance to get back in.
Taking the playground down. This is your last
I will remind folks to email me or email, what's the communications email address?
ICSD Communications.
ICSD Communications at
ICSD.k12.ny.us.
And tweet using the hashtag ICSD budget. If there are questions or comments about budget.
The budget mailer is going in the mail first thing tomorrow morning.
Well, that is one question I've been getting from like someone like who lives with me, wondering when are we going to see that?
People will be receiving that within a couple of days.
Okay, pretty good.
extra glossy.
Yep.
Oh gosh, I was
Extra glossy.
well, Chris requested that it be extra glossy.
Extra glossy. High gloss.
It will include valuable information in an easy-to-read format, non-glossy.
Printed in BOCES.
Printed at both.
Printed at BOCES. Thank you very much.
We will be conducting an exit poll survey again this year, hoping to capture some data. The data we captured from last year's exit poll survey informed our budget process this year. So we're hoping people will take the time to. Are we doing the Scantron this year as well? So we're going to be asking folks to circle a few dots that will allow us to get the information back out easier and disaggregate it a little bit easier than we did last year.
How does that work? I mean, is it going to be right on the ballot?
No.
Right, I was,
can't do that.
I know, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
There will be a few laminated questionnaires at each polling place, so voters have a chance to read the questionnaires, fill out the bubble sheet after they vote.
And how close can that be to the actual voting machines?
There's no,
Oh,
as far as I know, no limit.
So we're not asking politically, we're just asking.
I just didn't think you could do that within so many feet, but I don't know.
Well, I think if you're asking who you voted for,
You could.
then the answer is yes, you've got to be a distance away. But I think if you're asking for additional information, I think we went through this, was it last year? Survey, there was some people who complained that it was too close.
Yeah.
And the S&K said, no, as long as you're not asking about, you can't ask about the election itself, but if you want to ask other questions about what people are interested in the district or what they want to see.
That's the extent of the questions, correct? It's what?
It's about the budget. So.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
$110 million, not one question. You did good
We
work.
had questions last night.
And remind the board that we had over 1,600 folks participating in the robocall or the teletown hall conversations. We called 3,800 plus homes, so 1,600 connections. We answered 10 questions as part of that conversation. Those 10 questions were in the queue. We answered those questions on that occasion. The budget road shows, I've been to a few places. Some board members have been to a few places. We received questions there. The PTA sponsored event last night. I didn't count the number of folks in the room, but
25?
25 or more.
Yeah.
Many questions and comments at that time. In the various committees and meetings that we've had for the last few weeks, we've had budget conversations at each. So maybe we heard all the questions.
I just hope people get them out and vote.
And we're going to work on that get out the votes approach over the next week. Beginning tonight.
In the future, is the technology with a teletown hall, is there, I think maybe you alluded to it before, expanding that
Yeah.
to reach beyond just those within the district, but the community at large, or is that
It would be
ever
great to get,
intended?
yes, that is the vision, to get access to the phone numbers of every registered voter. We're working on what that will look like, which database we may have in our community that has all that information. So
Now, legally, you can do that?
And you could have dialed in.
Yeah, you could have dialed in.
You did.
Right.
I think Insider and a couple of the others had the numbers so that folks could dial in.
That's
Right.
good. That's,
I dialed in.
Yeah. Many folks dialed in. And again, our exit poll data showed that most of the folks who voted last year did not have children in our district. So we do know we missed a large population of people who vote, because the numbers we used were folks who had young people in our district. So again, we're working with the other jurisdictions and governmental agencies to get those additional numbers. The combination of having folks call in and us being able to reach out to them will be big for us going forward.
There certainly was feedback from several in the community that there's Grant, a person maybe with a question. But in the community, saying there was really a different way for, well, a public body, elected officials to really reach out to the folks in the community, something that really the Board of Reps and frankly the mayor and others have yet to do, I guess. And so that everyone found it very interesting. It's nice to be on the cutting edge on something, Dr. Brown.
Yeah, they reached out to us wanting more information about how we did it. The particular software and the vendor that we use, their competitors have also reached out. They're now following me on Twitter. They've reached out via email. They called. They want to be a part of this too.
I sense
Unintended consequence.
I sense we will probably do it again then.
Yeah, we will do it again.
The Board of Elections can't give you, can they give you the list of all voters?
Always, yeah, they can always do that.
Yeah,
They can?
we're working through that now.
I get that periodically. You get a disc, it'll cost you $5 or $10,
Oh,
but it's not phone numbers.
they don't
Right,
give
it's
you those.
It's addresses.
just addresses.
Registered parties. It used to be a book, now it's a disc.
Yeah.
Because it's somewhat public. So Corinne, we are in our budget hearing, not our exec session or anything. So, have anything, Corinne? Questions? You had a question out here last night and perhaps another one?
Well,
Comments? I mean, you know, really anything. Throw us a bone, Corinne, so because then we'll,
I can throw a few bones. I guess one of the questions that I would ask has to do with perhaps just having a little bit of a review of where we stand with our reserves, because I guess that's a question that probably didn't come up last night, and perhaps people would just like to address it because some people would like to hear about it.
good question.
Can we take a stab at it?
Of course, Brett.
Yes, we're using reserves. Round numbers, Margaret, a little over 3 million this year. Last year was a little over 4. So our use of reserves is declining. I would hope that next year it's a little less and a little less the year after that, but it'll depend to some degree on when the state of New York decides to come back into the game and increase aid, especially for districts like ours that are receiving less than 25% of our money from the state of New York.
But we're also creating a capital, we're hoping that the
Third proposition,
capital
correct.
will create another reserve fund, which...
That would be if we have funds available at the end of a given school year, we can transfer them into there and then ask the voters to use it for capital. But that's not on a schedule. I mean, it happens as it happens.
Right. And in terms of the overall soundness of the reserves that are not being used, where do we stand with that?
Last time I looked, we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 days cash on hand, if you measure it that way. It's 22, 23 million, something like that in total.
I think it's a little less now, but it's in that area.
Yep.
And
Right.
Brad, despite that, we spent reserves $4 million last year and $3 million this year. We've also been replenishing some of that as well,
Replenished,
right?
not at the same
Not at
pace.
the same pace.
Not at the same pace. But we were able to replenish some last year. We expect to be able to replenish some this year. So it's going down, but not rapidly at this point.
And Corinne, you've been fairly brave and shown up at audit meetings, when we get our audit. And certainly it's one of the areas that we look at really first is where are we on reserves, but we also take a look in throughout the year to get a kind of close approximation, Margaret and Angela, how are we doing this year on our spending? As everyone understands,
Where are we gonna end up?
we are, this is a proposed budget that we cannot exceed. How are our expenses? We're able to control them. Dr. Brown, over the last few years, it's, we've been, okay, we will hire when necessary or when needed, but we want to make sure that all new hires are really a critical need once we have our budget set and our FTE. So throughout the year, it's, how are we doing? And we get an update, in finance, throughout the year. Angela will come up with a basic approximation. And then finally, when we get to July, we'll get, okay, this is where we are, and this is what we're able to put back into the 2010 reserve or the 2013, the new one. So it's always really upmost on our minds is, are we depleting it too quickly? Or that's been a discussion at the board level really for the past 5 years now, since
not everybody's plans.
how are we going to use this and how are we going to keep it going?
And actually, if I could make a comment in relation to that, having been at that audit committee at least once, and hopefully will be again, the firm that does the audit, do they also make recommendations to the board about where the reserve funds are? Do they have any kind of formula that they?
No.
They don't.
No.
I couldn't remember. So.
No, we don't hire the same firm to do consulting.
Okay. All right.
Separation.
I have another question.
Sure.
So, I think it's very exciting. I've heard very good positive feedback from various sources that there is in the innovation use of some of the money for the expansion of the pre-K. People are pleased to know that we are moving from the amount of classrooms that we had and adding 2 more. I would like to know a little bit more about how the board or the administration is planning on staffing those 2 pre-K classrooms. I think there was some question about how do you decide whether it's a teacher plus an aide, or where that is at this point.
Most of the pre-K classes right now are staffed with a teacher and 2 aides. The alternative that we are proposing with these 2 additional classes is to have a teacher and a teaching assistant. Teaching assistants have a higher level of qualification than aides do, and so we think it's like a potential pilot opportunity for us to test out that model. I have it there. There's a pre-K leadership team comprised of teachers and other people involved in the pre-K program that I meet with on a regular basis, and it's been one of our topics of conversation. One of their big concerns is when an assistant or an aide is absent, being able to make sure that they have a substitute and things like that. And those are things that seem small, but obviously are very, very important in the day-to-day existence of a class of 4-year-olds. So we're looking into all of that, but again, the thing that I'm reminding folks is it is a chance for us to look at this as a pilot. It does not necessarily mean that this is the way we're going to be doing every single class in the future. The other thing we're looking, whether it's for next year or for years, or for like the year after, is to look for some ways to possibly partner with some community agencies with pre-K classes, whether it means classrooms, and I'm being very broad because we don't have specifics with that, but ways to partner with different aspects of our community in a stronger way than what we're currently doing. So we're excited to be able to look at expanding a program that is already very, very good and a model for the rest of the state. I was told that when I came, and then I've gotten to see that this year. So it's been a fun opportunity for me too.
You said lots of that men only get them to come here. Honestly, most of it's true.
That's not what you said.
Very good. Excellent questions, Corinne. I mean, really touching on subjects that did not come up last night, and that's good. Anything else, Corinne?
I'm thinking. Anybody else have questions?
And Corinne, you're president of PTA Council, so you do work on you do have some capacity to speak for the input that you get from all your membership. I'm killing time, correct?
Well, to help you with that, would we have just 5 more minutes? Is that it?
Well, I was giving you an opportunity to ask another question, but then we'll
I'm trying to
move
think
on
how
to
to
business.
formulate it, because I can just say that today we had a PTA council meeting, and we had what I would call an extremely robust discussion about, well, first of all, the issue of tracking and even like let's get rid of that word entirely, but also of special education. And I just found it very interesting that I think there was a very clear statement made by board members last night at the budget presentation for the district-wide PTA meeting, that we're not really dividing money for one special group compared to another special group, that really the thinking is for all children and programs that address the needs of all children, even when there are special needs. It's a very creative way of sort of changing the framework. And at the same time, at this meeting, there were still individuals who wanted to know the line item. And I just put that out there as an observation. I guess one way to think about this is, let's say an individual, a parent, knows that their child, for example, particularly needs speech therapy, occupational therapy, some types of specific things that are either mandated by their 504 or the RTI. I guess the question is, how are those services being provided? And I guess that's a question. It comes out of a certain pool of money.
Sure.
Right.
And that question has been asked of Dr. Bruce Jowl 20 times in the last 4 days, so she probably could do this answer in her sleep.
Well, I can say that no special ed decisions, especially for students identified for an IEP or 504, is done randomly. So all students that have IEP, in order to even be identified as having a disability, is after many evaluations. And when those children, their case is brought up in special ed chair meetings, if there's a decision made to alter the IEP, of adding services or maybe removing services, those are done because of evaluations and assessments and a conversation. So I do want to get back to some of the parents last night who felt as though maybe some services were being taken away haphazardly. That's not the system that we have in place. And so one of the things that we talked about last night as well as this morning of systematically, we do look at decisions that affect all children with special needs. But in terms of problem solving, those individual cases, they really need to be looked at one case at a time in terms of how those specific decisions were made about a specific child related to their IEP.
And the funding for some of those services just comes from different, I mean, I don't even know if this is a way to think about it, but that's sort of the question.
Well, there is a large grant that comes from the U.S. Department of Education out of IDEA, legislation that was passed many years ago for students with disabilities. But that is not the only source of funds that we use to support children with special needs. In Ithaca City Schools, I would say more than half of the funds that are available for students with special needs come from the general fund, not just that one specific federal grant.
And you can understand our difficulties in trying to separate out funds from the budget to say, okay, this is the special education budget, this is the general education budget. You know, Dr. Brown, we're starting a new initiative with game-based learning in the elementary schools. There's more funding for that this year. How am I really have trouble, in my mind, okay, what portion of those dollars are going to go with 2 children in that classroom that have been highlighted as needing some extra services, or those who have IEPs, or those who have perhaps just minimal special needs, or but that game-based learning is going to help going to hopefully be integrated in that classroom. It's going to be able to help the gifted child down to those who need a little extra. So how am I going to cut that dollar amount for that classroom up between those children in that classroom. So it doesn't, to me, it's a question that we certainly don't want to go and can't go. We're looking to provide sound basic education to every child in that classroom, and that by state law, that is what we do. And so to say, okay, what's the special education budget and what's the general education budget, I'm not going to say it's nonsensical, but to me, it doesn't make any sense.
It's a new way of thinking.
Does that, but I didn't want to say I just can't think that way. But that's just me. Others can peel that out. But
And just to add, that there's been no directive from the board to anyone, any administrator. It's not anything we're trying to do at all, is to save money by cutting funding for education. That's not the case at all. So.
I think something that we can provide that's a little bit more concrete is to look at specific positions that are paid for out of the federal grant versus the general fund. When it gets into program initiatives, that's when it gets a bit muddy. But some concrete information that we could provide are, what types of positions, such as school psychologists, special education chairs, speech therapists, speech pathologists, occupational therapists. Those are things that we could probably, put a monetary amount to that may satisfy some of the concerns last night.
Great, Corinne. Great questions. Touched on all the hot topics. That's great. And we appreciate you coming, Corinne, and asking questions. And that's. Go ahead.
I was just going to move that we adjourn this portion of the public meeting discussing budget.
Well, it's.
We're actually moving to executive session. That's what do you mean?
Well, we're in our budget hearing, and I haven't called our regular meeting to order yet, so
We need to.
So I'm
You
thanking.
need to end the hearing.
I'm thanking Corinne for coming and asking great questions and contributing to the dialogue.
And the budget hearing meeting.
If there's no other questions, Corinne, you're good. And I don't see anything else, so we're going to end the budget hearing for this year. We look forward to it again next year, about the same time and the date, the calendar. And I will call the the May 14th, that's May today, right? May 14th Board of Education meeting to order. I'll entertain.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss
Pending litigation, personnel matters relating to specific individuals.
Second by Elder. All in favor? That's everyone, and so we'll be in the other room for a bit and come back at 7. All right, I'm getting there. I'm getting
Come on, Rob, we're waiting for you.
I know. Okay, we will get started with our regular board meeting, and we'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. It's been a busy day so far with HR committee, and then a budget hearing, and then an exec session, and here we are. And I do believe we are in our public meeting portion, and I believe perhaps there are some modifications to the agenda.
I'll offer just one. I want to add to the consent agenda a supplemental resolution having to do with the appointment of poll site managers and election inspectors. And the list is in front of you.
Oh, there it is.
Just
Okay.
asked to add that to the consent agenda.
Because, Brad, there is an election and budget referendum next week,
And that's what I hear.
next Tuesday, the 21st. And that's it, Brad?
That was it.
Okay. Okay, very good. Hearing from the public and staff. Nothing, Jared? You got nothing for us? Okay. Anyone wish to speak that's here? No one signed up, so we'll keep moving. And we'll move on. What do we have next? Student reps. Ithaca High, I heard nothing but good things about the prom, but I won't steal anybody's thunder. What's going on, guys?
Okay, the women's varsity junior A boat won club gold at the New York State Rowing Championships in Saratoga Springs. And we also placed second in the state for a category. That was really exciting. The sophomore class is holding, I believe, a softball tournament. I'm not sure about the dates on that, and I'll get back to you about that. The Ithaca High School band concert is Wednesday at Culp at, I believe, 7 p.m. You are all invited to come to that. The music department trip to Washington, D.C. is from Friday to Sunday this week. AP weeks are coming to an end this Friday, which is a great relief to many students. And there's a photo show in the library starting next Thursday.
You alluded to prom, which took place. I was among the skeptics. I wasn't sure it was going to work out. You know, the forecast was for snow and rain and other horrible weather, but it turned out to be a very lovely event. Our class advisors did a great job putting up the decorations, and our student elected presidents and such did also a great job of planning. I think it was a super successful event. Mr. Powers also has opened in the library the Bookmark Cafe, which will be serving healthy snacks to students, including but not limited to fruit and juice and muffins. And it'll be open from the beginning of school until the beginning of the first lunch period. So students who maybe didn't get a breakfast at home can now go to the library and get a healthy snack to enjoy. So thank you to Mr. Powers for the Bookmark Cafe.
And to Denise, I assume.
And yes.
Is caffeine involved in this in any way? No? Okay. That's what I mean. There's coffee. That's...
Red Bull here.
A true coffee shop, that's great. We did hear about that when we were in the library the other day. We had a quick tour of the high school that we were involved with last week, so that hope that goes well. Anything else? LACS?
All right. I guess it's been a busy couple of weeks for ACS, and the next couple of weeks will be pretty busy too. Next week we have our LACS Trips Week, and so a lot of students are really looking forward to that. I look forward to seeing, I guess, what comes out of that. As again, you all probably know by now, the whole principal search, I guess, goings on. And a couple of weeks ago, the whole school gathered and for a whole meeting and we all talked about qualities we would like to have any new principal, which we will then refine and submit to, I guess, any parties that will be looking into that for the search. And also this upcoming Monday, we will be having a parent question and feedback night, and general, I guess, not just limited to parents, but for the community. And we look forward to hearing what the community has to say, and then here has a few other points to add.
So the big thing in the world of LACS has been the principal search, and there have been numerous meetings. Students have been meeting in the family groups to discuss about it. We've had a whole school meeting, as Bernard said, and the staff have been meeting, and then also our site-based council has been meeting. And at our last site-based council meeting last Thursday, we put together a small team of a couple of students, myself being one of them, and a staff member who we're hoping to have meet with some people in central administration to discuss some things we'd like to really see in this principal search. And just a couple of the things we're really hoping to have. We're hoping to have a bit more control over the process, because we really think it's important that the school really feels like it owns the process, so that the new principal can more seamlessly integrate with our school. So we're hoping to be able to send out a packet of information about our school to potential candidates. We're hoping to have more students on the interview committee for the candidate interviews.
That's a big issue that's come up among students. They feel very underrepresented, excuse me. And that a lot of people have been talking about that.
Yeah, as of now, my understanding is that we're allowed one student on the interview committee, and we'd really like more. And then we're also hoping to have a bit more control over some of the questions asked in the interview. So those are just a couple of things we're hoping to have, and we're hopefully going to have some meetings with Dr. Brown and his team about that. That's mainly what's been taking our time at ACS. So.
Very good. That's, and obviously a big transition and a big event at LACS, and that process is ongoing, Dr. Brown. Right? Thanks, Ned. Thanks, Bernard. So board responses, anything at this point? Go ahead, Pat.
Just on the issue of the prom, I would like to extend my thanks as a parent to the many, many teachers who stayed outside to chaperone. And I'd also like to extend my compliments to Mr. Powers, who apparently missed his calling as a military strategist of the very highest level, because he had every inch covered, he had a contingency plan. There was an amazing sense of security, and there were a lot of people put in a lot of time to make the prom a success. So thank you all on behalf of our kids.
Do you have any idea of the percentage of kids that came?
There was about 300 students in attendance.
Okay, good.
I think we sold 320 and about 312 showed up.
And there were many, many volunteers, chaperones. I heard 40 in that range. So really.
And we haven't mentioned where it was yet. Everybody in the room seems to know, but the people at home don't know. It was
The farmer's market.
Thank you.
And let's be grateful it wasn't Friday night or Sunday night, because it was bearable, my understanding.
It was wonderful.
But it turned out well. The feedback I got was that it may happen again, but it was a very unique experience for the seniors, and really came together. The class came together to make it happen. The kids were invested to ensure that it was a very successful night. There were some boat trips involved, apparently, on the handle. So it's an opportunity to really embrace what makes Ithaca. So that's very appropriate. So well done. The only other items to mention for Ithaca High School, spring concert series are coming up. This Wednesday it's the band concert, I believe, and next few weeks it's choral, orchestra. If you have an opportunity, certainly this is when you should go out and see some of the seniors for the last time. Great talents on display. So that's coming up, and check your calendars. So anything else right now? And we'll move on. Consent agenda.
I'll second.
Second by Brad. Anything we need to speak to? Okay. Well, moved and seconded, all in favor? That's going to be everyone. Yeah, Elder is there. Okay, very good. So, Dr. Brown, we're on to your portion of the evening.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Just 2 quick things. I too wish to share appreciation with the administration, students, and staff for the prom. I had an opportunity to be there. And for the first time in my life, I felt underdressed. The outfits were amazing, absolutely amazing. And I enjoyed amazing and appropriate. I enjoyed checking them out, checking out the dancing. The band was great. I wanted to stay much longer, but I started to get that look from students that my time was up. So they could have fun, maybe, I don't know, but I was just getting that look like I was in the wrong place. But anyway, great job with the farmers market prom. I couldn't have imagined a better place to be on that evening. Secondly, just to speak to the principal searches, if you think you're busy, we're busy also. We have not only the ACS opening, but we have an opening at Boynton Middle School and Carolina Elementary as well. And for folks to know that we have a process that we have used for 2.5 years now that's worked well for us, and we hope to continue to do that, a similar process going forward. And we're looking forward to having a conversation with you later this week about some wishes and what you wish to see as far as the characteristics and the next instructional leader in your building. We will be with the Carolina staff and community tomorrow evening to gather some feedback from them. And we've already visited with the Boynton staff and community. The last meeting was yesterday, correct? I'm confusing the day. That's how busy we are. Yesterday we were with the community at Boynton, and on Monday evening we will be with the LACS community. So busy times right now. We're searching, and we're having conversations with some of the best instructional leaders in the country, folks who want to be a part of this work and are excited about leading in one of our buildings. So an exciting time for all schools right now.
Is that it, Dr. Brown?
That's it for me.
And Dr. Brown, just to follow up on that, certainly we've seen transitions over the past few years as opportunities, and so I wouldn't take it as a negative to go through a transition for LACS or any of the schools. It's really an opportunity to bring in the leadership that we're looking for, that you're looking for, and so really the community deserves for our schools. So you're busy, Dr. Brown, and so is LACS. So very good. We're going to go on to school district business, and item A is a Quebec City trip.
My name is Rebecca Stevenson. Hi. So I teach French and Spanish at DeWitt Middle School. This is my 2nd year of teaching in the school district. And I'm excited to ask your permission to kind of start to feel out, engage the interest at the middle school level for a trip every other year to go to Quebec City for students studying French both at DeWitt and Boynton. What I'm thinking of would be a 5-day trip, hopefully during the February break. February being a time in which they're still in session in school there, and we would have the opportunity to send our students to school with students one day there in Quebec. And also the program that I've identified offers a family stay program for those 5 days. So while it would be a short program, it would be really geared towards immersing them in the language and the culture, with the idea of really generating some motivation and excitement for the study of French, and thus prompting them to continue on through their years of high school and going on through the 3rd and 4th year of study. And at this point, I haven't presented it to anyone at all, so I don't know how much interest there would be for families and students at the middle school and even possibly the 9th grade level. I would like to keep it in at the younger ages, because not wanting to step on the toes of the Paris program that is offered usually for the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. It's a cheaper option. It's closer, so a little less intimidating for students who maybe aren't accustomed to traveling internationally. And I think it could be an exciting addition to the world language offering. So I'm asking your permission to go to the PTAs and see if there's an interest to start a program like this. Yes.
Have you been in touch with the French teachers at Boynton?
I have spoken to the teachers both at DeWitt and Boynton, and during our PLC time, and they've wondered if I was a little crazy for taking on such a trip with middle school aged students, but encouraged me. They thought that they share a lot of my thoughts, that it could be a great way to build the program and encourage students to study French.
Sean, go ahead.
I see two proposals here. One includes a homestay, one does not. So
February would be my first choice to offer the 5-day trip, but it's also a little sketchy with the weather. It may be hard to convince students to give up that nice break in February when they really need a break from their studies. So there's the option of going in at the end of the school year, late June, early July. The only thing is we wouldn't be able to take advantage of going to school for a day because their school is out. And actually we could include the homestay for the summer dates. But what I would do is go to the two PTAs for Boynton and DeWitt and ask them what the preference would be and see if we could identify the dates that they would prefer. I personally would push for February. I think it's exciting to be able to go to school for a day. And they also have a big carnival celebration for right around the Mardi Gras time, and that's a big thing there. But it would depend on the parents and the families.
Just a quick comment, and I'm asking because I'm sure that the liability on our end would be higher if there's homestays involved. And so for me, it makes a difference if we're staying in hotels under our own supervision, or if we're going into homes based upon a company that sort of attracts folks to open up their homes to folks. It's a phenomenal experience, but as I'm sure you know, there's other concerns that get raised when that takes place as well.
True, absolutely.
Right, and I was wondering how the host families were sourced, what was...
I'm sure they take some of that as well when they vet families, but having done homestays in other countries, it's always, I know there's increased liability that takes place across the board.
Eldred, go ahead.
A couple of programs I'm familiar with that over the course of several years introduce young people to travel locally, and then they cross the border, and then in the 4th or 5th year they have a big international excursion. Is there any thought about actually collaborating with the folks in the hospital? Right, so you actually become so there's some synergy. You don't actually have two programs down trying to introduce young people to French and travel, but one program.
Well, I certainly am talking, especially with Janet Bowman, about what's going on with her program that she leads every other year to Paris. We haven't spoken in depth about it because I did want to get your feedback and see what your general thoughts were. And so that is definitely something to consider and look into. I don't know if you want something, to have one program.
New Orleans, babies, Quebec for middle schoolers, and obviously Paris when they get older. But just something that actually becomes that regular expectation that we can build. We talked here about how do we build the district we want, right? But that sounds like
Well, the ideal scenario would certainly be to alternate the years. So to have, let's say we started at Quebec, they just went this year to Paris. So ideally, if we went to Quebec next year and offered it to 7th through 9th graders, next year 7th through 9th graders, then the following year would be Paris, and they're thinking ahead to kind of planning out, well, if they go in 7th grade, when they go to Quebec, they can already think, well, when I'm in 10th grade, I can already go to Paris, and then maybe even catch it again when I'm a senior, but definitely work together so that they complement each other and not compete with each other. That's most definitely my idea.
Other questions, comments? Seth, go ahead.
So I'm particularly excited about this trip, and as everyone knows, I'm a lover of the French.
Really? Seth's been to Paris, right? Okay.
If you speak English louder, they can understand you. That's right.
The
Louder
thing
and
I'm
slower.
particularly excited about with this trip is I'm always concerned with these international trips, like the Paris trip is $2,500, and that may be out of reach. I think it is out of reach for a lot of families. And the thing I really like about this one is that it's in the $1,000 range, and a motivated student and family can actually, do things to fundraise and so I'm fully supportive of this, not only because it gives them that great international language experience, but also it becomes a realistic trip that a kid can make happen with some hard work and hustle with his family. So I hope we get 100 kids and 5 buses and make it happen.
Well, I don't know if I want to start with 100, but yeah, I hope so.
And that's always a concern. So when you actually get the trip, expect kind of that questioning about, hey, what about the kid who didn't have $1,000 to pay on this? How have we made sure? And typically what I get is, we have a check box on the form saying, hey, if you can't afford this trip, let us know by checking this or something like that. And it's usually not effective in terms of actually, kids doing it, because I ask, well, how many kids are on this type of scholarship, or how many kids? Oh, well, we don't have any, or we almost had one, or so I'd really be impressed if you pulled this trip off, but also got some kids who fundraised and families who, made it happen, other than the folks who just wrote a check and made it happen. So
I would like to see that happen, and I would work hard to try and make that happen.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions?
It's great.
Typically at the board level, we're asked to approve travel internationally, and it's all ready to go, and so we approve that. So I don't think we take a vote at this time, but certainly I think there's encouragement from the board to sort of see where you can go with this.
Well, I will report back to you.
So we appreciate your efforts, Rebecca, in making this happen. Not only have I never been to Paris, I haven't been to Quebec either. So
You should go
So
as
I
a
never got to go anywhere when I was a kid. So
You should go as a chaperone.
so anyway, so it's a great opportunity to take kids that would not normally go. So you got your input. We're always happy to do that. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Rebecca. So we're going to go on, and it looks like there's some policies on the agenda again, and we're going to get into that at this point.
We don't have time to get to that, maybe fine. The policies we're doing this evening, the first policy is policy 1900, parental involvement. This is on for a second reading, and so I'll just begin with the motion. I move policy 1900, Title I, parental involvement, for a second reading and adoption this evening.
Second.
Second by Judy Max.
This is a policy we've been spending some time. I don't know if Dr. Jaw was in the room or not. Maybe wants to speak to it for a minute, and only in the or not. Or I'm happy to speak to it. Or whomever's happy to speak to it, because this is trying to outline the ways in which the ICSD is not only compliant with federal laws, but also trying to increase parental and caregiver involvement. Can I put you on the spot here, Dr. Jaw?
As a district that receives Title I funding and has identified Title I schools, this is a requirement that this policy is a district policy, and it's reviewed annually. And basically what it outlines is our commitment to help our schools build capacity in terms of how to build relationships with families, how to help families become active partners in decision-making, as well as become active partners in the education of their children. Some of the things that are outlined in the policy is our district's commitment for professional development of administrators and teachers, and the decision-making processes that go along with school plans, as well as the annual evaluation of this policy to include families, and our efforts to make it as easy for diverse families to be involved in the process. So not only will meetings be held at the policy level here in the district building, but it highlights some other areas such as community centers, different schools that may be farther away from Lake Street, to involve more families in the process. So it highlights some of the groups that we currently work with, such as the Village of Ithaca, EILC, IPEI and becoming real partners with diverse community agencies and nonprofits, really to give parents and families and caregivers the support they need to be active partners in their children's education.
There's a questions, comments. There's a couple of changes and or questions I had to the policy recommendations. That the first would be in the second paragraph. The first full sentence says, "This policy exists to better ensure." I'm wondering if we didn't prefer language to something similar to, "This policy exists to ensure that all CSD schools, including schools identified for Title I funds." In other words, I'm trying to, and I'm asking Dr. Jowell this as well, if we consider these to be best practices, the assumption would be that all of our schools would be doing this, while the policy, because it's a required policy for federal law, must also speak to Title I fund schools as well. So does the language, can I read that language part to you again? Right, that this policy exists to ensure that all ICSD schools, including all schools identified for Title I funds, develop a school improvement plan. Does that?
It does speak to our commitment as a district, whether some schools are identified for Title I or not, in terms of our commitment to involve all families. But it specifically talks about the mandates of what we must do with the identified Title I schools. So although it is a goal that all schools, we work to have good professional development for the staff as well as administrators, it does highlight what some of those mandates are in terms of the decision-making processes of parents whose children attend Title I schools must be involved in certain types of decision-making committees that may not be a requirement of non-Title I schools.
Understood. And then there seems to be two places where we repeat information, and that may be what we want to do, but in the bottom of page 1, we talk about the services we provide, particularly for excuse me, non-native English speakers and or hearing impaired parents. We also make that same reference under the bullet points, either on page 3 or page 4. On page 4, excuse me, there's this very similar statement. It may be fine to repeat it multiple times just to make sure people understand what's taking place, but that's something I just caught last evening.
It's fine.
There's certainly seems to be reiterations within the policy, but that's the way it's going to read?
If we keep it as is, yes.
Yeah, I was looking back and forth. So
There's some things that the federal policy mandates that we give attention to, who will be involved on school-based decision-making teams, how will we build parent capacity, how will we provide professional development. So some of the language is repetitive because we do reference the same types of methods, but most of the things that are written in the policy in front of you are areas that the legislation says you must address in the policy.
And then my only other comment or possible suggestion for a change would be in the last page where it talks about collaboration with all ICT school and community groups for coordination and services. I'd like to add SEPTA to that list. I don't see them there currently.
Oh, I would like to, we didn't think about that.
And then beyond that, I think the policy is good to go.
And just to clarify, was your first edit in the second paragraph? That's not.
It was taken care of by Dr. Jowell. I think part of the issue one of my questions were, is the law mandating particular language? And the answer is yes.
Right. Just want to be clear.
So no change.
Okay.
Can we put SEPTA in without a motion?
Without objection.
Go ahead.
Where are you inserting it?
Make a motion.
The very last paragraph of the page 4, collaboration with all ICSD schools and community groups for coordination of services. We list a couple of folks that we will be working with.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I see it.
Parent-teacher association put it after that.
Yep.
Sorry, I just didn't find the paragraph first time.
Yep.
The last paragraph, correct. Yep. Makes perfect sense. With the edit, as that's the only edit to the policy that's in front of us on my Dropbox at least. So is the policy committee. Okay. I'm getting a nod. All in favor? That's Everyone? Sean, I guess we're good?
I want just to make a very public announcement that we have just completed the 1,000 series. We're going to get Judy a t-shirt. That's right.
Take a break.
So we now have the 100 and the 1,000 series done, and we're working our way to the 2,000 series. We'll get there shortly. The next policy up for second reading, which is policy 5140, entrance age. So I move policy 5140, entrance age, for a second reading and adoption this evening.
I second.
Second by Chris.
Quick word, this is the policy that the only thing we've changed in this policy is adding the word on or before December 1st. We had a brief conversation about it last board meeting. We'll be coming back to this policy 5140 when we get to the 5,000 series, but we're changing and adding those words in preparation for this academic year, in preparation for next academic school year.
Okay.
So what's the change on that, Sean?
It used to say before December 1st, and now we're adding the language on or before. Sorry, it said on December 1st, right?
It said by December 1st.
So we've added the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brad, do you have?
Well, yeah, I'm hopeful we bring this up actually as a discussion this fall or later summer and fall to discuss whether we're at a point where we're ready to actually make a real change here and start moving this to November 1st, October 1st, whatever, especially as we transition more resources toward pre-K, having more children ready at kindergarten, that I think changing that date will assist in that process as well.
I think Dr. Lindo's been tasked with that.
Yes.
Next little bit.
Kindergarten teachers are already seeking me out. So.
Okay. But we're not voting on this now.
We are.
We are.
Second reading.
See, I'm getting lost again. But this is the second reading because I thought we had looked at this before. So with the edits and as presented, all in favor? That's going to be everyone. And we didn't have long to savor finishing the 1,000 series show.
No, because we got more work to do. No rest for the weary here.
I mean, I think that's why I'm lost. But we're gonna go on to something with a 2 in it.
We are. We're now working our way to the 2,000 series. We'll be coming to you in the next month and a half with the 2,000 and 3,000 series in some sort of sporadic fashion. The 2,000 series is all about board governance and almost directly applies to what the board does to manage itself and its employees. The first policy is policy 2000, which is the board goals and priorities. So to get it started, I move policy 2000, board goals and priorities, for a first reading.
Second.
Oh, there you go, Pat. Thank you.
And I'll entertain questions. We had some conversation about what obviously is a goal and a priority. We've tried to identify what we consider to be partly from this boilerplate what the operational goals were of the district. We added one. No, we just changed language about.
We took one out.
We took one out, correct. And then we added our current priorities that were adopted last reorganization meeting.
Exactly. Okay.
Why the prominence, focus on number one, to identify the goal, to identify the educational and technological needs? It just surprised me that we added technological as a very specific thing.
We got that from NISBA. There was,
And in fact, technological could be a subset of education.
yeah.
So I didn't know if there was a particular reason that this was added as a...
And in fact, there was no conversation at our policy committee meeting about that word. And I don't know if this is the recommendation, Jay, but if you're recommending for us to delete it, it's something that I don't think would get too much opposition.
I think it could be deleted. It's giving it a prominence that I don't know.
Identify the educational needs of the Ithaca City School District.
Do you remember, Pat?
I remember that we didn't discuss it, and my particular thought was that there has been a great deal of emphasis on overhauling the technology of this district, and so that I thought if I didn't question its prominence, but I'm not wedded to it.
But it equates educational and technological as equal.
And some would say that they are.
Well,
So, but a simple solution for us just to focus on, we can make, I think that what I heard Jay say is that it can almost be assumed that the technological needs of the district are included or a subset of the educational needs. And so for simplicity's sake and for the sake of keeping the focus on what we're really trying to achieve, maybe the number one should read to identify the educational needs of the ICSD. And I think we're happy to make that change and come back to it at the policy committee will meet between now and the next board meeting to pass these on for a second reading as well, but that's the change we can easily make.
Right. Technology is a tool.
Got that. Additional questions, comments?
Go ahead, Jay.
So number 2, to employ, and this seems a little wordy, maybe we're not trying to word, but to employ a superintendent of schools, anyway, here's the words, capable of ensuring, we want them capable but not doing it, or it sounds like potential as opposed to.
Has the capacity but not the ability.
Yeah.
The district maintains position. These are pretty much NISBA boilerplates, the operational goals.
I don't want to take ownership of this. I'm just kidding.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
The sentence didn't bother me personally. I mean, we actually had, our debate was whether it should be district goals or district operational goals, and that's why we put in the priorities, because we felt that those were more philosophical goals of what we wanted to accomplish, but we thought that there might be a reason to have operational goals, what concrete steps we would take in order to assure that the philosophical goals be met, and capable of ensuring that the district maintains its position as an outstanding school system. I thought that was a fine, broad mandate.
But to Jay's point, it is a bit government speak. And that school personnel carry out the policies of the board with energy and dedication.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little...
Would that be nice, though?
Well, I mean, it's a little Politburo stuff. I mean, you know, we will... Well, anyway.
I was pushing for a 5-year plan.
Exactly.
I thought that number 2 was trying to make the point that the board hires a superintendent.
Well, we want a certain kind of superintendent. We want a superintendent capable of ensuring that the district maintain its excellence.
This is part of the conversation that we had at the policy committee meeting. This is one that's required in a local policy, or excuse me, it's a notice in a local policy, it's not required. So there's even some dialogue, do we even need to say to the community what the operational goals are? These are not the duties of the board, right? These are in theory the operational goals of the board. So in the board's operations, what goals does it seek to achieve is sort of how it was coming across, and that was some of the dialogue we spent. The language, yeah, I'm not a fan of most of the language and any of the boilerplate policies we get from this, but sometimes we do much more wordsmithing than others. Sometimes we leave it because, goals are in essence to be lofty. That's the conversation we did have was, is it a lofty goal or an ideal as opposed to something that's concrete? But again, these are all things that if the recommendation is that the policy committee go back and take a look at that second bullet point, that's happily what the policy committee will do.
Or all the bullet points.
Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, I don't think this is the place to have this discussion about these words, and I'd recommend that we go back, and I might even attend the policy meeting, and because it's awkward, it's long, it's.
I think that was a threat. I think Seth is threatening to go to a policy committee.
Is this, in fact, a policy that the board wants us to spend further time on, or is it a policy that the board wouldn't mind that we omit?
I could move the meeting. I'm good with the priorities because that is what is done annually by whomever is on the board,
and we'd have to know that we change it.
Altogether.
We discussed that.
We did discuss that.
So then what I recommend is, I'm not sure what procedurally the best way to do it, but that the policy committee take policy 2000 back to committee and resubmit it for, we can either say, we can pass it as a first reading, just come back and resubmit it as a second reading, and do some work on it that way if we want. But that would still require a vote for us to get it by first reading. Fantastic.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the first reading? Is that...
And we'll take it back with the promise that we'll take it back and follow this recommendation of getting rid of the board goals and rewriting it with just the board priorities.
You're gonna take it back and fix it.
That's good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Jay, for helping fix this. We need a vote, correct?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? That's everyone. So we'll move on.
Policy 2100 is legalese, school board as a legal status. This again is very similar to boilerplate, though it has been read a little bit, and the point of this is to, in many regards, if I'm not mistaken, to indemnify board members and to not hold the district liable for the statements of individual board members. And we had just a very brief conversation about this policy. It is also a local notice policy, not required, and you can find the boilerplate information right there.
Was it seconded?
Oh, so I move policy 2100 for a first reading.
Second.
Think by Pat. Okay. Pretty straightforward.
Very straightforward.
Okay. Anything? So we're gonna go ahead.
No, I was just noting the last paragraph. Complete and final authority of all district educational matters except as redistricted by law.
Restricted.
Restricted, sorry, yes. Will be vested in the board. Very
That's
law.
It's clear.
That's pretty clear. Yep.
In perpetuity and throughout the universe.
Yep. So
Suddenly feel good.
it is a reminder that your vote counts, and our votes are important as we all votes that we take have consequences.
Absolutely.
So all in favor of this latest vote? His motion is everyone, including Jay. All right.
It brings us to policy 2140, board member removal from office.
Here you go.
So I move policy 2140, board member removal from office for a first reading.
Yeah.
Not required.
It's not required?
It's not required.
It's legal.
So,
I see fine print in here.
It shouldn't be fine print, it's a bad font change.
It's pretty fine. A font change, and I'm sure it has something to do with the qualifications of people in suits, but I can't read it. But go ahead, Jay.
so the second paragraph about a vacancy.
Yep.
Right.
Former board member, Mr. Dexheimer, would go to Florida.
He has a sufficient excuse.
Well, that calls into question the definition of sufficient.
It does.
And
As determined by the board, I would think.
so why even have a vacancy on the board? Why not have the first paragraph only and delete the second?
Well, part of the second paragraph is a member has changed his or her legal residence from that of the school district, so that part would, I think, have to stay.
Right.
That would be, let's see,
And I have seen the language regarding the 3 consecutive absences from board meeting. I don't know that it's always been followed in the past, but certainly.
Well, and Jay, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think this says that you have to do that. I think what it says is that there's the board has the ability or the flexibility or the option of declaring a vacancy if a board member's been absent for 3 consecutive meetings without sufficient excuse. But even that would take majority vote. Right, there would need to be a resolution brought to the board. There would need to be a majority vote to actually make that happen.
So there's somebody on the board nobody likes.
If they missed 3 meetings in a row?
Boom.
That's right.
Exactly. You have to protect.
No, I mean, it's something we can definitely discuss. We spent some time talking about board removal and having conversations about things that have taken place, obviously, in our own history and other districts, which seem to be a little bit more contentious, and it happens probably much more regularly where people bring sort of a charge like this. But we haven't had a concern. Well, that's not. You don't write policy in case of, right?
Right.
Now, here's a,
Go ahead, Elder.
seems this might be an area where you might allude to technological options. I could bust an Achilles playing golf. You have to miss several meetings, but I could dial in or use another way to participate without physically being here. Or is that exactly the point, wanting us to physically be here?
I think there's a requirement that to cast a vote, a board member must physically be here. Yeah.
That was when we were still going like this to dial telephone.
And what makes you think our law has moved any faster than that?
We're before that even.
Just so you know, and this is a true story, the policy that we're replacing here, 2140, if I'm not mistaken, was last revised in Ithaca City School District in 1979.
Not a bad year.
Right, so there you go, right? So
It's a good year. So,
I don't recall having seen the earlier 1979 policy, so I
Say it
don't
again.
remember what it says, but,
very similar.
okay.
From the policy book, yeah.
My concern or recommendation may be not even to have this policy, because board members can be removed for,
Ethical violence.
yeah, there's a way to get, this policy in effect says 5 members of our community who are board members can defeat the wishes of the 2,000 people who voted that board member in. And for whatever reason, a simple majority, 5 of us, can get rid of a board member, that was voted in by whatever the number is now. So I'm not sure the purpose of giving us that power to negate the 2,000 votes of folks in our community. We can, I believe, if I remember correctly, there's a way you can petition the commissioner and to have a board member removed. Does anybody know, is that?
Yeah, and they'll
Yeah,
make a
that's-
decision after their term runs out, after the person's term runs out.
Okay.
Well, the reality is that this is what this policy is stating, even though it not might be as clear. The board doesn't have the right to remove a board member. They vote to actually petition the commissioner to make that happen.
Right.
So that's
Oh, okay.
that's what the resolution is.
Yeah, you
Right,
can-
but so the commissioner doesn't do that on his own. The commissioner only does it when the request comes from the board to remove a
And
board
that's the
member.
majority
Yeah.
vote. Okay.
And that
Or the
goes-
regulation of the
So it may not be, again, and this is almost straight boilerplate language, and partly it doesn't read well. We've been trying to find ways to make it clearer, so we can again do a little wordsmithing to make that part clear
Yeah.
about what the process is, right? That
Yeah.
it's not the board saying you're out and you're out. It doesn't work that way.
Right,
And that's why it says official misconduct, right? That that there's grounds by which a board member can be removed and once you set up your resolution.
Because I'm always hesitant to take away the right of this large group of voters to, and, not that will happen here, but just, it's something that we should think about.
So we can go back through and have additional conversation with council about what may be the best way to indicate the steps in the simplest, most clearest language possible.
And to follow up with Sean's statement, a few individuals on the board cannot go to the commissioner. The board can only act as the board. Individual board members cannot act on behalf of, that goes to the other policy that's in here. So it has to be a collective board action, but it's up to the Commissioner of Education to make a final determination.
And actually, this is one of those policies that I was wondering if, even internally, if we wanted to have some conversation about what a supermajority would look like. Right, that seems a pretty serious decision for the very reasons you're talking about. That should we require ourselves to a higher, or hold ourselves to a higher standard, that if we're thinking about removing someone, that we require a supermajority vote, as opposed to a simple majority vote. And that, I always want an added protective as well, to make sure this is really something that needs to be addressed as opposed to personality driven, and it still could be that way as well, right? But it adds another vote to the tally. And I don't even know if that's something we can do or should do. It's something I was thinking about just the other day, but we can investigate a little more if we choose.
Or last time it'd be 5.
Six, probably.
Well, the person you kind of boot.
Still, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, sure, they would, they're still on the board.
I think you still need 6.
He needs 6 out of, if you're gonna go to a supermajority.
That's right.
You can go to 2/3, you can go to 6.
But it was always be
6 out of the 9.
Out of the 9.
6 out of 9.
it always be we are a 9-member board.
There's state law about that?
I would think. Whether we can have.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do it without checking with the council. Yeah.
So we should vote for the first reading here, or send it back?
No, vote for the first reading, and we'll do our work, because we've had a good portion of the conversation. I hope that we can come up with a fair compromise for everybody. If not, we'll postpone it at the next reading until we get it right.
Very good. On that note, all in favor? That's everyone, including Eldred, I'm sure, if he knew we were voting. There we go.
And the last policy for the evening is policy 2150, filling board vacancies. So I move policy 2150, filling board vacancies for a first reading.
Second.
By Pat.
And this is another policy that we updated. I don't think we updated since like 1976, but we're borrowing some of the same language. In fact, I think we borrowed one of the paragraph. We didn't borrow the paragraph, we borrowed the idea of the paragraph. And in essence, it leaves the board with 3 options to fill in the board vacancy. One is to fill the vacancy by majority vote or appointment. Second, to leave the vacancy vacant to the next general election. Or third, to call a special election for that person to fill that seat until the following regular election.
I don't know why you're getting rid of all the classics, Sean. You know, 76.
Just changing some language, that's all.
The practice remains the same.
It does.
I believe this is a good sentiment to kill me.
That was 9.
There's animosity here, is that
Yeah.
what? Oh, okay. All right. And certainly the policy follows state rules, regs very closely, and this is pretty standard.
Yep.
So,
These are our legal options.
and you don't have to you do not have to replace a member that resigns for whatever personal reason that may be. You don't have to have an odd number board. You can have an 8-member board or 6 or whatever. But
In fact, we had a little bit of that conversation last time about the board's decision when we left the seat vacant. That, in fact, it was to have even numbers, that the possibility of a tie made us have different conversations at that point in time. And so it seemed to work out well. It's also the same time period that we got the good doctor here. So.
right, exactly.
I don't recall that we had any big problems.
No, we didn't, right.
And with the knowledge that we are a 9-member board, regardless of whether someone resigns or not, we still need 5 votes to pass.
Yep.
And that was understood by all.
Yep.
And everything worked out just fine, Dr. Brown.
I would agree.
And I think we're good? Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Did we vote on this one?
Not yet, I'm going to do it right now. All in favor? That's everyone. And then on to the Tatler resolution.
I'll move the Tatler Guidelines resolution as printed in the agenda.
Second.
Second by Judy Max, and is anyone going to speak to this? Michael wishes to
Ari
speak.
and I will, yeah.
Oh, very good.
So first of all, I'd like to know what the 2009 guidelines are and how they differ from the 2005 ones. That would be helpful.
Yeah, so I mean, what we were really hoping is, both Ari and I are on the current iteration of the editorial board, which is the Tatler's 120th. And Ari will be an editor next year. Unfortunately, our editor-in-chief is at an away game right now for baseball. He might be walking through the door any minute, I'm not sure. But the guidelines, as we understand, were agreed on between a former principal, either Mr. Mills or Mr. Wilson, and the current iteration of that editorial board, which was in 2009. So we were just really hoping that there could be a conversation either between some of the board members or a designee of theirs. So we weren't even aware of these 2009 guidelines. So we were hoping that in order to come to a clearer policy that everyone understands and is happy with, obviously primarily yourselves, that the current editorial board could engage with either a subset of the board or a designee of theirs in order to come up with a set of guidelines that way.
That still doesn't tell me what prevents us from passing our resolution this evening and then continue to work with you good folks afterwards.
Right.
That implements a set of guidelines that none of us have even seen.
None of you have seen as current students, but doesn't mean it hasn't been discussed and debated and litigated and everything else prior to
Your
this.
advisor should have it.
Those guidelines are in place right now. So I would, as newspaper men, I would expect you to probably be able to find those. But I'm just as a bystander.
Or I think we have sent them out to folks too.
But it shouldn't be that hard, I think.
No, and it isn't. But I learned about this morning when I checked out the agenda. So the fact that no one even came to Miss Lynn, I would assume, who's our advisor. Maybe someone did, and she just decided it wasn't relevant to pass along that information. I don't know. But certainly, no one came to one of the editor-in-chiefs to say, this is on the agenda. If
We're just reaffirming. Am I correct? We're just reaffirming the 2009.
This is a part of the ongoing legal actions that the district has been litigating for 10 years? 2005. So it's 8 years, sorry, my math.
Sure, and maybe I misunderstood the purpose of this. As I understood it, the 2009 guidelines were agreed on solely between that editorial board and the then principal at the time. And a number of the editorial board members met, and we only surmised that the reason for this happening was to implement a policy that was only applied at the time to a certain editorial board. And I'm not sure if that's the case because I'm not sure,
No, I think they were meant to be ongoing
Sure,
guidelines.
but at the time,
They've been litigated that way, in fact.
Yeah.
As ongoing, continuing guidelines.
And just like we bind the district, with this group of folks here, that board bound Ithaca when they agreed to those guidelines.
If I can, I think there are two issues at stake here.
Yeah.
One, I think we're trying to address two things. I think you're trying to address the immediacy of the editorial board and your working relationship within the guidelines to be able to do the kind of work you want to do. The board is also dealing with a long-standing litigation issue as well, right? And so these things, they may be somehow connected, they may not be. So from our perspective, it's important not from our perspective, we will be passing these guidelines. I'm sure, I imagine that that's probably going to take place. But it doesn't preclude us, prevent us from having additional conversations about what those guidelines may look like going forward. I hope that part makes sense. I know you don't like it, but I hope that part makes sense.
Certainly willing to revisit the guidelines, and that's, I'm not sure whether the high school leadership team is ready to do that. So I think we'd have to delve into this a bit. But, I'm not sure even the information that we have that's in our Dropbox. Michael, I'm not sure whether you've had a chance to look through that, whether that's available to
The
them.
2009 guidelines are in there.
Well, just the background on the legal actions.
I don't think it's even in the
I'm in the Dropbox right now, and I can't see the 2009 guidelines.
Are you under
No, they're not there.
Tatler case?
It's not in there.
They would not be under Tatler case.
Oh, okay.
It's litigation, so it's not going to be there.
So that I'm clear, you've been operating under a set of guidelines, and you're saying that they have 2005 on them?
right, so until we read the agenda, maybe what our advisor is aware of and what we are aware of are unfortunately two very different things.
Yeah.
But none of the current editorial board members were aware that we were operating under any written guidelines or policy, which seems to indicate, some matter of lack of communication between either our advisor or us or administrators and our advisor. Where that disconnect occurred, I'm not positive.
So we will clean that piece up, because you should be operating under a set of guidelines. And those guidelines have been in place well before I was here, well before most of the members on this board were here. And following this case and learning much more about it in the past few weeks and months, these things have been in place for a while. We should be operating under them, and right now this is just a legal exercise for us, what we need to do as a board and team.
Because the guidelines were already in place, what does your action tonight with taking this vote serve to achieve?
And the attorney in the room is going to speak to that right now. Right, Bob, Mr. Van Kuren, this is going to allow us to do what?
This resolution is simply to identify to the court that moving forward, the district agrees that the 2009 regulations are what control here, and that there have been no additional things since 2009 that are in place. It's really clarifying for the court because there are two very small issues remaining in the litigation, and this will help position the district to answer those questions. So it's not doing anything new tonight. We're not implementing any new rules. The guidelines from 2009 are it's just being clarified for the purposes of the court perceiving that those rules are in place.
Well, the fact that students are saying we have indeed not terminated the extension. The administration has not to try it. Nikki.
Since what, 2013? Michael, how long have you been on that?
Since last year.
Okay, well,
I'm not available yet.
I'm trying to think your entire time you've been at high school, whatever the Tatler has published and whatever has been written in the Tatler has been within the guidelines and it's met the guidelines, and I'm not sure whether there's anything out there that you wish to put in, but if it was obscene or I can see the guidelines, but there are broad broad guidelines, but frankly only for good taste, frankly, for the most part, of what you would not normally put in anyway. But
Sure, the editorial board has had conversations with our advisor in which she has not allowed us to print certain things. So, I think what would be the most helpful at this point is first just allowing us as a group to read the guidelines. Obviously, you're going to pass this. Nothing I'm going to say is going to, and it doesn't even sound like, right? But give us a chance to read it, and then I think we would be very, very happy if you'd be willing to engage in a discussion about, it's possible that we don't have an issue. Again, we need to read it in order to know.
Right. You might read that. Well, is there any reason they can't see the guidelines? Right. There's absolutely no reason at all.
I'm not sure that what we have there
is
the proposed guidelines. Correct?
Yeah.
That was the proposed guidelines by counsel to the litigants.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
It's on stone bar and Slaughter.
Letterhead, right.
Letterhead. So I'm not.
So what I'm right.
I
What
thought
this
that was
is.
a fax to them.
That wouldn't have their tagline on it. It would have their tagline on it if they sent it to us. I believe that was his proposal.
So do you have in front of you what you'll be voting on tonight?
Yes, it's right in the agenda.
But I mean, do you have the 2009 guidelines in front of you tonight?
I do not.
They're not voting on the 2009 guidelines. They're simply identifying for the court that the 2009 guidelines are still in full force and effect and have not been amended. So they're not voting on anything that already isn't in place. This is just a confirmation by the court that we're affirming that they're still in place to the court.
I think that makes sense. Maybe. So.
Did anybody move these yet?
I
Move our
did.
resolution?
It's been moved.
Second?
Yep, it was moved in second, and we've been discussing. So we appreciate the persuasive arguments by the Tyler staff and editorial board. So I'm still not clear which version of the guidelines is the version.
2009.
No, I mean, but of the 2009 versions, it's I'm looking at one guidelines, but those aren't the guidelines, Brad, or
it's not clear to me.
Yeah, that's part of the litigation.
Right. Whether that's
part. That was. I'm reading that as to be something that was presented by the litigant.
Okay. So we'd like to see what the guidelines are.
Well, and I think it sounds like the advisor needs to be speaking with the students about it.
Right. You're gonna go to the advisor and.
Sure, and she wasn't here. She won't be here tomorrow, as I understand it. She's attending a function of her daughter, so
that's
we'll
fine.
get right to that.
Well, it will, at your first opportunity. Right now, I think we're going to go ahead and, we'll go ahead and vote because that's what we do on the resolution as presented in the agenda. So, all in favor? That's everyone, and then we'll revisit at a later date. So, was there anything else?
Did we do the voting, or was that in the consent?
We added it to the consent.
Right. That was added to consent. Any other business by the board?
We adjourn into executive session to discuss the litigation and employment personnel matters for particular persons.
Seconded by Eldred. Is that what you're doing, Eldred? Okay. Seconded. We do have to go back and exec because we have more work to do. So we are done here as long as everyone votes on that motion, which everyone does without objection. We're in exec session. Thank you.